Are you tired of the government spying on you all the time with proprietary messaging applications like Telegram and WhatsApp? Yeah, man.
I love WhatsApp. I love the government constantly spying on me and storing all my messages on their servers. It's really cool.
But you know what's even cooler? Running your own XMPP server so they can't track you, okay?
It's way better.
So, we're going to get started installing ejabberd today, okay? Now, to start off with, you're going to need these DNS entries. I'm going to assume you already have a domain, right? Because you'll need the domain for this. You need all of these DNS entries present on your registrar. So, your main DNS entry, an A record. You're going to need these 4 different subdomain entries as well. The reason for this is there's loads of different services ejabberd provides. For example, file upload, SOX5 proxy, publish subscribe nodes and stuff like that. And by default, it's going to try and check that these DNS records exist. So if you don't create these, you can have a bad time, basically. So, I'm going to be doing this install on an Arch-based system. I'm going to assume you already have a certbot installed in order to get TLS certificates, because obviously we're going to do this with TLS, right? I'm going to assume you also have MariaDB installed, and you have Nginx installed, the way the Arch Wiki does it, so in separate config files and stuff like that. I'll show what I mean by that later. To get started though, we're going to install ejabberd. So, it's on the main Arch repositories, so we can install it here and get all the packages. Happy days. So, now we need to create various different Nginx domains for the different domains I've specified here. The reason for this is basically we want to use certbot in order to get the TLS certificates. And when you create these domains, certbot will recognize them if you install the Nginx module, or you can do this with Apache too if you want to. But it's going to recognize these domains. It'll automatically be able to renew the certificates, and also it will get all of this for us. Now, ejabberd does have a built-in TLS certificate like retrieval service, but there's not much point in using it if you're using if you're already using for example, Let's Encrypt for your domains anyway, right? Because you're doing that all with certbot, so you might as well do it with the same thing. So to start off with here, we're going to create these different domains in sites available. Now I already have one for liberatedsystems.co.uk, so that's perfectly fine. I'm going to do conference.liberatedsystems.co.uk, since that's the first one. And basically all the certificate looks like, well, not the certificate, the config file, sorry, looks like is this. Now this will be on the blog post linked in the description on our website. And effectively, all this does is it listens on port 80 and it returns 404 when someone requests it, right? But this is useful because when certbot sees this, it's able to actually retrieve the request and then get a TLS certificate from that, because it will verify that we own the domain. So I'm going to change the server name here to conference.liberatedsystems.co.uk, and then I'm just going to copy this to the other domains, such as upload. Oh, sorry, conference to upload dot liberatedsystems.co.uk, and basically for each one, I'm just going to have to go in and change the server name. That's basically it. So I'm just going to do that now. Okay, so now that we've done that, we just need to create symlinks as well for all of them. So we'll do ln-s to size variable. I'm going to start with conference, and then you need to just make the symlink in classic Nginx fashion to sites enabled. Reference. And then we just do that for each one, basically. That's okay, so once all that's done and you've created all the symlinks, all you have to do is restart Nginx. And this is basically going to reload all the symlinks you've created here, and it's going to load them so that it starts serving these routes, right? So, we've got this now. Now we need to edit the certbot renew service. And the reason for this you'll see in just a moment. So, I'm just going to edit it here, certbot renew.service. And basically, within here, we need to add this modified unit file. And by the way, when I used do as just now, you can use sudo as well if you're still using sudo. Okay, so basically, this is the modified file, and the only different file, the only different line here basically is the xxstop line. Now, the original file, what it does is it runs certbot renew, and it does it quietly and whatever. This on xxstop will run bin bash -c, and it will run cat let's encrypt live your domain, and then privatekey.pem, and then let's encrypt live your domain full chain.pem. And what it's doing is it's putting both of these certificates together. So the private key is at the top, the full chain is at the bottom, and then redirecting this to a file in varlib ejabberd called liberatedsystems.co.uk.pem. So that's for creating the basic chain that ejabberd can use to serve TLS certificates. So what I'm doing here as well is, by default, I believe these TLS certificates are owned by root. So what I'm doing is I'm just owning them to Jabber. XMPP used to be called Jabber, so that's the reason for this naming. So the user that ejabberd runs as is Jabber. And then basically I'm just changing the permissions for this so that it can read, write, and execute it. That's pretty much it. So I'm going to write that file, reload the system D daemon. Can't run that as root. Oh, it's daemon reload, yep. And then we can exit out of that. So now that's done, we can actually run certbot to get our certificates now. So if I do as certbot, and it's going to, you can see all of my different domains here. I'm just going to press enter to renew all the certificates. And you can see I already have existing certificates. So I am actually not going to bother with doing this, and I'm just going to cancel. But for you, you can carry on and install the certificate. And then what you'd run after, basically to trigger the copy from the let's encrypt directories to the ejabberd directory where the renewed certificate will be, you could just run systemctl start certbot-renew. Now, even if your certificates aren't up for renewal yet, it already would have executed the xxstop. So if I list the varlib ejabberd directory, you can actually see within here that it's created the liberatesystems.co.uk.pem file, as I expected. And that contains our certificate that I created there. So now we get into the fun part. Now we actually get to configure the server. So go into here, host, localhost.
I'm sorry, buddy. What do you mean, right? Localhost isn't going to be helpful here.
Get rid of that. We want to put our actual host in, which is our DNS name. Okay. So we've got liberatesystems.co.uk in there. Next, we're going to do the cert files that we have. So we can ignore this line here because this is a slightly different configuration to what we're doing. And we're just going to go cert files. And we're going to specify var lib ejabberd liberated systems .co.uk.pem. Now the pem, again, all of this is inside of the ejabberd folder, like I just showed you. So we're also going to disable the built-in acme for ejabberd because, like I said before, we're using certbot instead, so we actually don't need that. And if we don't disable that, it'll probably cause some issues later. Okay, so we're also going to configure SQL. So by default, ejabberd actually uses, if it'll show us, yeah, it's actually using Mnesia, which is like, I think it's like an Erlang database or something like that. But this is limited to 2 gigs of size, so that's going to fill up really quickly when you're storing messages and stuff like that. So here we want to uncomment this line, okay? And once we've uncommented that, we want to go up here. We'll just do it after the shaper rules, okay? And all we need to do is configure the SQL stuff. So SQL type could be MySQL. The SQL server will be on localhost. And SQL database, we're going to create a database. Oh my gosh. We're going to create a database called ejabberd, and the SQL username is also going to be ejabberd. And then the password, just for tutorial's sake, I'm going to just put this as password. Okay? So we've got all this now. We're going to be able to connect to our SQL database, but we need to actually create this the database first. Okay, so if we do as MySQL, log into the SQL console here, so we can create a new user called ejabberd at localhost. Okay, this is identified by password here, and identified by password. And then basically we have to create the database as well. So create database, ejabberd, got database here, grant all privileges on ejabberd.star. And basically what we're doing here is for the database, we're granting the permissions and all permissions for all the tables inside of it to the user that we just created, which is ejabberd at localhost. Done that now. All we need to do is flush the table privileges and then just quit. Right. So we've created all of this now. SQL is configured. Now from here, we need to set up some secure TLS configs, okay?
Because when the feds start capturing your traffic, okay, you want to make sure your TLS is properly configured, because if it isn't, they're going to be harvesting all that data, buddy, okay? You're going to be screwed otherwise, alright? So
we're going to go into the config file here. Yeah? Now, there's a couple things we need to set with the cipher suites and things like that, okay? So, firstly, just to clarify some terms, C2S here, that we have up here, okay, C2S means client to server. Client to server communications are basically communications from an XMPP client to an XMPP server. Just had an earthquake. To an XMPP server, okay? So An example of that would be like a profanity client, for example, connecting to the XMPP server. Now, we also have server-to-server connections. So server-to-server, it's basically one XMPP server connecting to another on a different domain, and these connections are mainly used for like exchanging messages and stuff like that. It's kind of like email in the same way, because you can send emails to a different domain, right? It's literally the same in that concept. In fact, there's a lot of similarities between XMPP and email. So if I go into the client to server thing here, and all I want to do is I want to add some extra protocol options, and I pasted the wrong thing. Brilliant. Okay, so we've got these protocol options here. This file here probably won't exist yet, so we'll create this in a moment. That's for DH parameters, basically to make the communications a bit more secure. Effectively, what we're doing here is, in fact, I'll delete this duplicate line. We don't have shapers or anything. Yeah, just delete that. Cool. So basically, on this line, what we're doing, protocol options, we're disabling SSL 1.2, SSL 1.3, because SSL is old as hell. We're using TLS now. We're disabling TLS version 1 and 1.1 as well, because these are old, insecure versions, and it's generally just not a good idea to use them. We're specifying these cipher suites here, and basically these are known like secure cipher suites for modern day computing. And this will change over time, so you might have to update this every couple of years or so, as kind of computing power gets stronger and these algorithms are weaker in comparison to the factoring power of these computers. So yeah, we have whitelisted cipher suites here. We're enabling start TLS by default. So basically, when a client connects, we're going to tell them to automatically turn TLS on. And we're also going to say that's required. TLS compression is off. That's just recommended by Process 1 who develop ejabberd. So we're also going to do this for the separate port here. So generally 5222 is for unencrypted communications, or just regular, like no TLS. But basically we're just saying like turn TLS on anyway. And we're actually requiring it here anyway. So this one by default as soon as you connect. So this is a little bit of plain text communication. This one, as soon as you connect, is immediately on TLS. And generally I think most clients connect to this port now anyway. So all we're going to do is we're going to paste that same config file here. Just to also configure this. I'm just going to make sure there's no duplicate options here. So start TLS is required. Start TLS is on. Yes, I can disable that because TLS is enabled here anyway. TLS compression is off. Yeah, that's everything there, and then we've got the DH file set as well. Okay, so now we can configure the server-to-server communications. Now, for example, if I scroll down here, you'll see that server-to-server communications using start TLS are actually optional by default. You don't really want that. You want to force other servers, so you won't communicate with other servers unless they have start TLS on. Some servers probably don't have start TLS enabled, but to be honest, like, everyone should be using TLS at this point. I mean, come on. It's $ current year, okay? Like, if you're not using TLS, I don't know what to tell you, right? So make sure that you enable this ideally. If you really do need the compatibility, you can change it to optional. But so far, in my experience, I haven't had any issues with communicating with servers because most of them just have start TLS available. They're not using some ancient like other XMPP server or something like that. So we've got the same DH file and then the same ciphers as well, and these are just safe ciphers for the modern day. So we also have another option here, and this is to configure server-to-server inbound connections. Now, I think this is it here, right? Yeah, that's it there. Okay. So this is just for configuring the inbound connections, and again, we're just saying no SSL 1.2, no SSL 1.3, no TLS 1, no TLS 1.1, okay? Because all of these are just like, absolutely cringe. Like you don't communicate using those protocols anymore. Okay, so from here, that should be it for the communication. Now, if we try and start the server, and I give it my password, there we go. Server is started. Okay, so we're ready to add users to the server. Okay, so the way you generally do this is through the ejabberd CTL kind of command line. I can show you here. So I'm just going to turn off my command line history here, and you should probably do this too. Simply because when we're creating users, you have to write it on the command line. Okay, it's not done through standard in. It's literally done through like Bash itself. So you want to be careful doing that because you don't want to have passwords in your history file, right? So we're going to turn off history. Now you have to run these as Jabber user, because otherwise you don't have the right permissions. Don't run it as root. Don't be autistic. Okay, so you're going to run ejabberd CTL, and you have all of these different options here. Okay, you could do loads of different stuff. You can actually create MUX, multi-user chats from here. You can clear the cache, dump files, stuff like that, register different users. Okay, so there's loads and loads of different stuff you can do here to manage your server. We just want to register a user for now, so I'm going to do as you Jabber. You can do this with sudo again as well. ejabberd CTL. I'm going to run register jacob.eva on the liberatedsystems.co.uk domain. I'm going to set the password to be password. And again, you see what I mean? I've had to literally type the password there. So you really got to be careful with that. And it said user jacob.eva at liberatedsystems.co.uk successfully registered. So it's registered my user. Okay, I'm in the database and everything now. So from here, we can turn. Oh, sorry, it's just set -o history, isn't it? So I can turn my history back on now. So we need to add this user to the access control list. So I go ejabberd, and if we go down to the access control list, which is here, I'm just going to add a little admin clause here. So we're going to do admin user jacob.eva at liberatedsystems.co.uk. You want to do this for your user as well. And this is just to create, make yourself an admin user, so you have enhanced privileges over the server, so you're able to like configure chats, kick users, ban users, things like that, basically. Delete accounts. That's the kind of idea. So obviously, if you're not an admin on your own instance, like what you're doing, so you'll kind of want that. So from here, you go restart. Basically, whenever you change the config file for ejabberd, you have to restart it. Okay, so we're going to restart ejabberd. It might take a little bit just to restart. Okay, so it's restarted here. So now I'm going to go on to Profanity and try and log into it. So now I'm going to connect in as the user that I created, and here we go. You can see that I've actually logged into the server. Now this is pretty bare bones right now, obviously, because there's literally nobody on the roster because I'm the only man on the server. Okay, and there's absolutely nothing. So let's try and join a room instead. All right. So we're gonna join general. Okay, and I'm just gonna accept the default configuration for this room, and you can see I can send messages here. That's an unencrypted message, but I can send messages here, and it actually works. So this is storing all the stuff on the server here. Right. Okay, there was actually something else I forgot. We need to have 2 listeners for the server-to-server communications. So, for the first listener, we could do port 5269, and for the second listener, it's port 5270. The reason for this is, as before, we have a client to server, one that's encrypted and not encrypted, but they both actually redirect to being encrypted anyway. And for this is just generally how the standard is. You have one that's encrypted and one that's not encrypted. These configurations are basically the same. There's no real difference because we're not allowing unencrypted communication anyway, but this is generally just how communication is done. So now we can create multi-user chats. This is what this room is. And we're able to send messages. So the next thing is to be able to perform federation. Now, the way federation kind of works is the way servers connect to each other and the way generally clients are also made to connect is through SRV records. So effectively what you want to have is an SRV record pretty much like this on your DNS provider. So you want to have an SRV record that specifies time to live, priority, stuff like that. And then you want to have your domain at the end. Now, I'll go ahead and create these SRV records quickly. Okay, so eventually your SRV records, once they're set up, they should basically look like this. So we have various different SRV records for different services that we're providing. For a regular XMPP client, we're just providing this port here. For an encrypted client, we're providing this port, server, this port, encrypted server, this port. So basically it's pretty much the same thing because all the ports are encrypted anyway, but you have to have these SRV records because this is how servers communicate to each other, and for reliable client communication you also need these too. So we have our client room here, and we're able to send messages into it. So next, and basically the last thing we want to do is test that server-to-server communication works. Now the way I'm going to do this is on my other monitor here, I'm just going to log in with one of my accounts, and then I'm going to attempt to join this room here and see if I can send messages. So I'm going to connect to general at conference.liberatedsystems.co.uk, and here we go. So I had to change my nickname because I can't have two people named Jacob either. But you can see here that there's another participant called Jacob, and he is also able to send messages, and these messages come straight through. So this is cross-domain communication here, just like email, and yep, I can also see the message on my other screen there. So that's pretty much it for this tutorial. Thank you for watching, and
make sure to deploy your XMPP server to stop the feds and glowies from getting all your data.